members of the media. We have just heard our second quarter GDP figures. To put things in context, this is our worst quarterly performance on record. The forecast for 2020 essentially means the growth generated over the past 2 to 3 years will be negated. The numbers reflect the impact of COVID-19, as well as deeper forces reshaping the global economy and our position in the global value chains. I know that some are still hoping for a quick recovery and a return to the familiarity of the old normal. The painful truth is this: we are not returning to a pre-COVID-19 world. Recovery will still be some time yet, and the recovery is not likely to be smooth. We can expect recurring waves of infection and disruption. Furthermore, recovery will be uneven across sectors. Some sectors will progressively recover, while others will be permanently changed. We have to start now to build a new economy and to create more and better job opportunities for our people. We cannot wait for COVID-19 to blow over. Let me explain. The world has changed irrevocably in 4 areas. First, the geopolitical environment which had allowed us to thrive in the last 50 years has changed. The tensions amongst the major powers are increasing. The competition and tension permeates not just politics, but also trade, technology, and security. And because the benefits of globalization have been unevenly distributed, the merits of free trade and global integration are increasingly being questioned. We hope that the geopolitical issues will not spill into open conflict that will further destabilize the rest of the world. We must avoid being caught between the conflicts of major powers or be stranded in a fragmenting world of trade relations and technological standards. One simple example of the challenges: if we do business in China, we communicate with our Chinese counterparts by WeChat. They can't access WhatsApp. If we do business in the US, we use WhatsApp. WeChat may not even be available in the US in the future. Frictions like this will be inevitable in a more complicated world. The second factor is the way global companies are reorganizing their production and supply chains. Companies are reviewing the need for regional hubs thanks to digital technology and ubiquitous communications. A few has decided to just have one global HQ and a few local centers where their customers, production, or specialized talent are. Manufacturers are reviewing where their factories are sited. Many are shifting from a focus on efficiency or just in time to resilience or just in case. They want to diversify their operations, markets, and supply chains so that they are not dependent on any one site. On one hand, new investments will come our way. For instance, some manufacturers are thinking of a China plus one strategy and actively looking at ASEAN, including Singapore. On the other hand, some existing investments may diversify away from Singapore, especially where Singapore is the sole manufacturing site for some MNCs. It is a fluid landscape, and we must do everything we can to defend our capabilities and capacities while winning new ones. We must also harness our competitive advantages of legal certainty, intellectual property protection, connectivity, policy consistency and coherence to overcome our constraints in land and labor. The nature of tax and how it affects investment decisions have also changed. The US has already made a major tax overhaul. Many countries are spending more than what they are bringing in, and there is pressure for them to collect more taxes from MNC and to pressure companies to do more in their home countries rather than overseas. Some countries have unilaterally taken measures to tax digital activity and are looking to do more. They are also asserting their influence through global platforms like the OECD. All these will affect companies' investment decisions overseas, including in Singapore. The above circumstances provide us opportunities, but also challenges. If we do not adapt quickly, we will be bypassed. Third, the nature of jobs have changed. COVID has shown companies and workers that remote working is possible. Over the years, we have successfully created many jobs here, especially PMET jobs for Singaporeans by having many HQs and factories located here. With remote work, more global opportunities for our workers will come. But it also means that other workers in other countries can do our jobs from their homes. You might have noticed that some jobs in the regional headquarters here are being advertised as can work in Singapore or can work remotely. This will affect many PMET jobs, which can either be done virtually or through automation and AI. Fourth, as the economic pie grows more slowly or contracts, it will cause more societal frictions and tensions between those who have more and those with less, between local and foreigners, and even between Singapore citizens and PRs. The calls for greater protection and more redistribution can be expected in many societies, including ours. We cannot isolate ourselves from the world. Without the world as our hinterland and market, we will reduce Singapore's economic maneuvering space and limit rather than expand opportunities for our people. We will need to better take care of those affected by job and business losses. We have and we will continue to do this in a sustainable way that is not divisive, affirm the dignity of work, and strengthen our social fabric. These tensions, unless well managed, can divide our society. This is not the Asian financial crisis or the global financial crisis where if we hunker down and things will improve in a few months. If we wait it out, we will likely be in worse shape than we are now. Therefore, we must chart a new direction now for a very different and uncertain future. We do not have all the answers yet, and the ground realities are fast evolving, often without precedents. But we know that staying still is not an option. But we must walk, and we will walk this path together. Everyone must chip in. participating, including contribution of ideas and suggestions as we move into uncharted waters. We must work together with our people to help them understand the need for changes and to implement them smoothly. In the next few months, we will provide regular updates on the economy and job situation, sector by sector. We will involve the unions, the employers, and the trade associations. We will visit companies in various sectors, work with the unions and associations, discuss with them the changes, and chart the way forward together to get us through this crisis. Ultimately, challenges will not define us. How we respond to these challenges together will define us. While the path forward is unclear, we will hold on to three principles as we chart the new path ahead. First, we will open for business safely and sustainably. It will not be a binary option of open or close. It can be done. We must stay open while isolating the impacted clusters quickly and tightly, doing it progressively and systematically to know which are the high-risk areas. We will learn from the experiences of others and watch their development closely. We must learn to manage the spectrum of risks from different activities proportionately and put in place tighter measures for the higher risk activities. Above all, if each and every one of us exercise social responsibility, we can permit more activities to reopen with less risk. Second, we will help our businesses and workers make sense of and adjust to the new world. We have three archetypes of firms. The first group of firms are those with opportunities notwithstanding COVID-19 and perhaps because of COVID-19. We will give a boost to help these firms grow, because as they grow, they will create more jobs and opportunities for our workers. Examples of this include many in the ICT, biopharma, supply chains, and precision engineering sectors. The competition for these new investments has become more intense. We will continue to create and provide a conducive and attractive environment for new businesses to start up here and for them to plant their investment here for the long term. We will compete for the new industries that will entrench our role in the global value chains. It is not just about making money now. It is about building resilient and sustainable systems for the future. And job creation in the next 1-2 years will be critical, beyond just the value add captured. Jobs preserve the dignity and livelihoods of our workforce and the confidence of our investors. The second group of firms are those who are suffering a drop in demand but will eventually recover. We will preserve their core capabilities in the meantime and help them emerge stronger. Helping these companies with their cash flows from JSS to rental relief schemes are part of these overall efforts. Over time, we should redirect the support towards helping them generate fresh revenue and become more cost efficient. Some F&B companies, such as A1 F&B Group, build new revenue streams in products and delivery even after dining in resume. Some enrichment classes and event companies have expanded to online events and services to build new revenue streams and to adjust to the new way companies are working. The third group of companies are those in industries that have permanently changed. This is the most difficult part. We will help them reinvent themselves, pivot into new markets and new products. Some businesses are already acting now. They know that the good old days will not return. Many of the mass market tourism, MICE, and social entertainment companies are thinking and acting along these lines already, and we will help them along. We know these are tough decisions to make, but they are necessary for us to overcome the crisis together. The faster we adapt and change, the faster our recovery. Conversely, the slower we adapt and change, others will overtake us and the opportunities will bypass us. Third, the government will fully support our businesses in this process by establishing the right macro conditions, as I've mentioned. To preserve Singapore's ability to compete for jobs for our people, we will strengthen our links to the global markets for supplies, technology, and talent. Our aviation and pop hub status can never be taken for granted. We will fight to defend our networks and preserve our capabilities. We will say more about this in the coming weeks. Our business and financial hubs status depend on strong connectivity with the world, be it with people, data, finance, or legal. We will continue to break new grounds for the digital free trade agreements to open up more markets for our businesses while preserving access to conventional markets through the conventional free trade agreements. And we will continue to invest in our people and train them for tomorrow's jobs. And we will strengthen our job matching efforts. Minister Josephine Teo will share more later. In the coming months, retrenchments will rise. Some companies will be forced to close, and it will be a difficult time for our people and our businesses. Companies must treat our workers fairly, with dignity and respect. We will help our people to take on new jobs with new skills. And we must preserve the Singapore core for skills and capabilities. Let me invite Minister Josephine to share a few words before I round up my sharing. Jo, please.
Thank you very much, Chun Sing. And good morning. Thank you to members of the media for joining us. As you are well familiar, since the start of the COVID-19 outbreak in Singapore, the government has been stepping up our support to employers as well as job seekers. Some of the major schemes which you are familiar with include the Job Support Scheme, and you also know that we convened the National Wages Council quite early this year and will reconvene it again, the second time in this year. In the past few months, we've also been working as a tripartite group to provide guidance to companies on what they can do to best adapt to the situation. In particular, where companies have excess manpower, we provided guidance based on the tripartite consensus on what companies can do. This would include how they can go about their cost-saving measures and to try and minimize the impact as much as possible to their workers. This is a period of great volatility. I think we experience it. We talk to companies, we talk to the workers. They also appreciate that the situation is very fluid and continues to change rapidly. The key during this period of volatility is to try to help the companies to retain as many of their workers as possible. So I very much welcome the call by the Singapore Business Federation to all businesses to ensure that they explore other cost-saving measures first and to make retrenchments a last resort. And if they have no other ways of keeping the business afloat. They need to survive, and the only way that they can do so is to try and trim themselves, and they have to let people go. Not only must they conduct the retrenchment exercise with a sense of fairness, dignity, and respect towards their workers, we want them to also be very mindful that for as long as they operate in Singapore, they should try as best as possible to retain a strong Singaporean core, for many reasons that Minister Chan has outlined. Preserving the company capabilities, the enterprise capabilities, very often depends on retaining the human capital as well. So this is something that we have to keep in mind. Now, at the same time, we recognize that there will be some job losses, and these cannot all be avoided. And for the newly displaced workers, we want to put resources in their hands. And essentially, it boils down to giving them 3 keys. First, as best as possible, a key to a job. Second, if a job is not immediately available, a key to an attachment or traineeship opportunity hosted by a company so that they can get the relevant industry experience and to be able to pick up the opportunities as they emerge when the economy starts to recover or we start to build new capabilities. So the attachment and traineeship opportunities hosted by companies is a second very important key that we would also like to encourage our job seekers to consider. The third important key is that should a job opportunity or traineeship attachment opportunity not yet materialize, that time can be also used to acquire new skills. And if we are looking forward to many aspects of our economy being rebuilt, reinvented, transformed, then certainly for members of our workforce, quite a large number of us are going to have to be equipped with new skills. So these are the 3 keys that we will aim to equip every newly displaced job seeker with. Now, I want to run through a job situation report that we are issuing for the first time, and will regularly do so in future briefings. We will explore different aspects of the job situation, but for this first inaugural report, I want to focus on something that we had talked about as far back as in March. We had articulated an aim under the SG United Jobs Initiative to curate close to 100,000 opportunities, whether they are job opportunities, attachment or traineeship opportunities, or skills training opportunities. 100,000, close to 100,000 of them. Where are we today? If I could refer you to the next slide. As of the end of July, we have been able to reach out to different employers, host companies, and training providers, and we now have curated 92,000 opportunities that are committed, meaning that the bodies, the entities that are responsible for putting up these opportunities, they've committed to make these available to job seekers. What does it look like? Well, half of them are what could be considered government funded. And these are essentially heavily subsidized traineeships and attachment opportunities, as well as hiring that has been brought forward by public sector agencies. So that accounts for about half of that 92,000. Another slightly below half will be private sector opportunities. They tend to be jobs that are hosted on mycareersfuture.sg, right? So that's part of how you could look at the 92,000. Slightly under half of these 92,000 are short-term opportunities. If you can look at the next slide, slightly under half are short-term opportunities, and over half are long-term positions. And actually, you can look at the next slide also, and about 7 in 10 of these opportunities are at the PMET level. So that's on the 92,000. Now, by the end of July, it's quite encouraging that about 24,000 job seekers have been placed into these opportunities. Now, these placements are mostly in jobs rather than traineeships and attachments because the traineeships and attachments have been more recently curated and the host companies are just starting to make the jobs available and to go through the process of bringing the individuals into these traineeship and attachment opportunities. Now, for this 24,000 that have been placed, about 6 in 10 are in short-term positions. And this reflects the fact that for short-term positions, the employers, those on the receiving end, they will find it more easy to match people simply because for the company's perspective, for the employer's perspective, if these are not long-term positions, the level of assessment that they will require the candidate to go through is not quite the same. So they are more likely to be prepared to take them on board. So about 6 in 10 are in short-term positions. Then about 4 in 10 are at the PMET levels. And this also, if I contrast it to the earlier figure, where I said that of the 92,000 committed opportunities, about 7 in 10 are at the PMET level, and yet on the 24,000 opportunities that have been filled, about 4 in 10 are at the PMET level. I think if you look at the difference, it shows that for matching of PMETs, it tends to be less straightforward because the host companies or the employers are looking for a better match in terms of skills, in terms of experience, as well as in terms of the wage expectations. So that's what this 24,000 look like. Now, I should just add that although the labor market has softened, there are still pockets of hiring. And in future updates, we want to feature the hiring sectors as well as the job. Of course, we also want to highlight those that are emerging as we rebuild the economy, as we move towards recovery. Right now, I want to highlight, for example, when you look at the manufacturing sector, overall, employment in manufacturing may have contracted, but we still see pockets of hiring in the electronics and precision engineering subsectors. And in fact, Chun Sing was just telling me last week when he met with the Singapore Business Federation, the business people told him that there were at least 1,000 positions that are open in the manufacturing sector that have yet to be filled. And we understand this may be because job seekers previously have not thought about certain jobs, certain industries that they are not familiar with, or they feel that perhaps the level is not quite what they're looking for. But we still hope that job seekers can consider giving these opportunities a try because they do allow you to gain relevant experience, and hopefully when the company is in a position to hire into permanent positions, you are in a better place to access these opportunities. So we'd really like to encourage job seekers to consider all opportunities that are available. And to help them in this process, of course, Workforce Singapore has intensified our outreach, and so that they will find job assistance to be readily available and accessible because they previously may not have been actively searching for job assistance. Now, in July alone, WSG has organized a total of 59 outreach activities. This is far more than what we would have done in a normal year. And of these, 11 of them were walk-in interviews where job seekers can meet potential employers and host companies, very quick type of interaction. And the rest included career workshops and seminars, as well as setting up of information kiosks to help Singaporeans become more adept and more quick in their job search, more effective by understanding better the various government schemes as well as where the hiring sectors are. For each of these kind of updates, we really do look forward to the media helping also to feature examples of individuals who have been able to make the adjustments and entered into new job opportunities. I think this is a time where we want to provide encouragement to as many job seekers as possible. We know it is a very hard time for them, and we hope that by sharing examples of people who have been able to make the switch from their previous job roles into new job roles or new industries, we will encourage them to do the same. I wanted to share with you today just one of these very inspiring examples. He's a 48-year-old Alvin Lim. I think from the photograph, you would agree with me that Alvin doesn't quite look 48. But if you were to know a little bit of what he went through, I think you will agree that he has a lot of grit, and the courage that he has shown is really quite remarkable. Now, Alvin was last retrenched in September, but you know, in the last dozen of years, actually, this is his 4th retrenchment. So Alvin has been through quite a lot. And in February of this year, very sadly, his father also passed on. So apart from having to deal with, you know, the stress of trying to get back into work, he was also dealing with a personal loss. So during this whole process, we were glad that we were able to walk with him on this journey. His career coach, the lady you see here, Belinda Boo, was with him throughout this period, because thankfully Alvin knew how to reach out to us. And we were able to assign him and pair him up with Belinda, and to, you know, help him to identify opportunities for him to work and move forward. Now, he wasn't thinking about applying for certain jobs, but he did take Belinda's advice to apply for a temporary role. It was a temporary role as a field surveyor. And what does a field surveyor do? A field surveyor goes out to collect and validate data on Singapore's labor market. And as it turns out, it's the MOM that offers these kinds of positions. Now, this is quite different from Alvin's past jobs in tours and travel, as well as the semiconductor industry. So you see that he has got quite a varied track record, you know, in terms of his job experience. He, in spite of his personal difficulties, he impressed the interviewer. He was able to describe his skills very well and his very positive attitude. And so, instead of taking him on board as a field surveyor, actually he landed a position as a team lead, meaning that he was asked to supervise and mentor a team of 8 field surveyors. And not long after he got into this role, his strong performance, in fact, helped him to land an extended contract. So these are the kinds of examples that we hope will encourage other job seekers not to turn down perhaps unfamiliar positions or even temporary positions, because quite often they could lead to something more permanent and more in keeping with your skill sets. Now, we do recognize that it takes a lot of effort for everyone to bounce back, but that is what we must do in this time. Be very resilient and know that we don't walk this journey alone. There will be career coaches, career ambassadors to support you along the way, and many government schemes backing you, giving support to the employers to consider you. I think at this juncture, I also want to urge companies to be willing to adjust their work conditions to bring more locals on board, because we know that there are certain positions that make it quite difficult for locals to consider the job. Sometimes they involve shift work, sometimes they involve, you know, certain work conditions that may not be so conducive, and there are also many schemes to help companies make this effort, and especially for the employers, we'd like to encourage them to consider candidates even they are not so young or may not look like their CVs have the perfect fit with the job role. So that's what I want to say right now. And in future updates, we will provide more granular information on different aspects of the job situation. Thank you.
Thank you, Joe. So we are in a crisis of a generation. But we are starting from a much stronger position than the medical generation and the pioneer generation. Over the last 55 years, we have built up a strong reputation of being a trusted place to do business. We have developed strong networks and connectivity with the rest of the world. We abide by the rule of law to give certainty to our investors. We have a highly skilled workforce, and we have strong tripartite relationships. All these factors will put us in good stead in the coming months as we compete for investments to create new job opportunities for our people. All our government agencies will work together to make sure externally we provide the best conditions possible for our companies to do business and remain connected with the world. Internally, we'll make sure that we provide the strongest possible reasons for others, both local and foreign, companies to want to invest in Singapore and create those jobs for fellow Singaporeans. And as Joe mentioned, we will strengthen our efforts to help match jobs with our people and to train them to acquire those new jobs with new skills. Our promise to all Singaporeans is this: while the future may be uncertain, while the conditions might be challenging, our commitment to every Singaporean remains unchanged. We will do our utmost to prepare our people for the challenges ahead, for us not only to survive, but to thrive in the new environment. And we will not wait for the COVID-19 situation to blow over. We will start now, refreshing our economy and building those new opportunities for our people and the next generation. I'll be happy to take questions from the media.
Thank you, Ministers. We will now begin with the Q&A segment. Media agencies, please remember to use the raise hand function on Zoom if you would like to ask a question. And a reminder to keep to one question only. May we have the first question from Taopao Zhiyin, please? Hi, Zhiyin, please unmute yourself.
Okay.
Thank
yeah,
you.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you, Minister, for the comments. I have a few questions. Firstly, Minister mentioned that growth generated over the past 2 to 3 years will be negated. Could you share how much growth might be expected to be negated, and is this within your expectations? And secondly, have you seen an increase in foreign companies indicating to relocate offices or regional headquarters out of Singapore due to rise of remote working? If yes, which sectors are most affected by this? And Minister did mention about everyone walking together on this path. Can you share more specific details on whether there's a action plan and specific timeline when this plan will be derived? Will we be expecting another round of large-scale budget measures? And lastly, can you just give an update on the Green Lane schemes? Are we in negotiation with more countries on opening up the tourism or the cross-border arrangements? Thank you.
Thank you. On your first question, I think Gabriel has shared with you, we have revised our forecast to -5 to -7 this year. So if you take -5 to -7, that just means that we have moved back between 5 to 7% of what we have gained. So that is about equivalent to slightly more than 2 years worth of growth mathematically. So that's what we mean by negated the last 2 years, 2 to 3 years of effort. Which sectors will be consolidating? In fact, every sector is looking at this. A lot of the MNCs are rethinking their entire global footprint of where they base their production, where they base their regional headquarters. Now, it doesn't mean that the opportunities will pass us by. As I've mentioned, there are also opportunities for us. As people diversify their portfolio, they will look for places where there's the certainty of law, where they can continue to connect themselves to the global markets despite the restrictions put in by many other countries. And we have established a reputation for ourselves as a trusted hub, that even through the depth of the COVID-19 crisis, we have maintained our ports and airports connectivity with the rest of the world. We have also ensured that our policy positions are coherent and consistent, and we allow other people to continue to export their products and services, including essential products and services, to different parts of the world. So all those put us in good stead. As people consolidate their production operations around the world, it also doesn't mean that we will be at the losing end of this. In fact, we want to give them every reason possible to consolidate their operations in Singapore because of our consistent policies, because of our connectivity, and because of our forward-leaning posture to allow them to conduct businesses with the rest of the world. So every sector and every subsector will be concerned with this issue, and we will be working with them closely to strengthen our position as a business and financial hub. In the next few weeks, in the coming weeks, we will progressively speak and share with you the plans for the respective sectors. We intend to do this progressively, so all the sectors that you mentioned will be covered progressively then. I will leave the budget measures to comments by DPM Heng and Minister for Finance in due course. On your last point about the update on the green lanes, yes, we are proceeding with negotiations with many countries to see how we can establish the reciprocal protocols for us to progressively resume essential business travel first before we look at the wider mass market.
Thank you. We'll take the next question from C-Kid from CNA Digital.
Hi, this is Sigit from CNA Digital. I have two questions. The first one is for Minister Josephine Teo. You previously mentioned about 4 in 10, when you talked about the 24,000 job placements, you mentioned 4 in 10 are for PMETs. You also talked about how matching is less straightforward for PMETs. So I was just wondering, will MOM be coming out with more measures to boost or improve the matching of PMETs in this instance, and perhaps especially for the older PMETs? My second question is about the job support scheme, because some economists have called for this scheme to be extended to support companies and also the labor market. So will the ministers be able to share if the government has any plans to do so, or do you guys have concerns that maybe extending the scheme could be supporting zombie companies? Thank you.
Thank you very much, Sikit. I'll answer your second question first. I think that's a very important question, and the government is looking actively as whether, broad-based support continues to be needed. We are very mindful that, in order to be able to focus our resources on helping the workers that are newly displaced, it's best if there is still a strong base of our workforce that are still that remain in employment. So that's something that is actively being looked into. But as Minister Chan had described earlier, Deputy Prime Minister and Minister for Finance Heng Swee Keat will address this question, I think, quite soon. So we will wait for that to take place. I want to come back to the question that you posed for PMETs. And it is a very important question because right now, PMETs are already about 6 in 10 of our resident workforce. So they are a very important part of our workforce. And we know that it took them many years, individuals, building up themselves steadily in order to be in positions of strength in their respective companies, occupations, and so on. So we are very mindful that as much as possible, we want to help those individuals retain and preserve their human capital, all these years of building themselves up. We are also very mindful that during this time, for them to be matched into a job is more challenging simply because the sectors or the occupations that they have been displaced from will tend to be the sectors that are not hiring anymore. And which means that they are more likely to have to move across to other occupations or to other types of industries. Sometimes the skills that they have acquired have high degree of transferability, and the top-up that is required for them to be effective in these new roles may not be such a big gap to fill, and career conversion programs of perhaps 3 to 6 months might be able to help them in this process. And we have no shortage of career conversion programs, working closely with companies, with industry associations to make these career conversion programs easily accessible and available to our PMET job seekers. Now, at the same time, one challenge that I think we will face, however, is that some of the transition period may take a little longer. So on the one hand, we will try and compress the time needed. For example, if people are moving into healthcare sector, if they're interested to move into a nursing role, for example, the training duration can be a little bit longer. So the individuals are likely to have to take a little bit more time to assess if these are the kinds of opportunities that they want to invest the time and effort in. So working together with the healthcare providers, we're thinking of how we can enable the individuals to have short-term attachments so that they get a flavor of what is to be expected in this new career. And hopefully that this will encourage them to make that leap. That is one type of intervention that we can make. Another type of intervention we can make is the company-hosted attachments. And because many companies right now will still be quite conservative in terms of their hiring, even if they know that they want to strengthen the company's human capital, want to build up their capabilities, and they want to take mid-career individuals on board, but because they know that the mid-career individuals also have higher expectations, they are a little bit hesitant to make the job offer. And that is why when we originally put out the SG United traineeship programs, originally targeting the fresh graduates, we found that there was a lot of enthusiastic response from the companies. And so we've also encouraged the companies that for the traineeship opportunities that they were prepared to make available to fresh graduates, to similarly make them available to mid-career, middle-aged job seekers. And the way in which we did so was that for every of those traineeship opportunities that we had curated and approved, we said the same approval applies to if you choose to offer it to a middle-aged or a mid-career person. That makes it easier for the companies. So the companies are now looking at this a new avenue that is extended to them. And we think that this could help to plug the gap in the interim. Let the individuals, be they mid-career or middle-aged, have a chance to be with the company. This gives the company a chance to also assess the individual. And like the example that I highlighted earlier, the positions may be shorter term at the outset, but when there is a good match, then hopefully it will also translate into a proper job offer. So these are the ways in which we are helping the PMETs to try and enable as many of them as possible to transit into new roles. Thanks.
Thank you. Before we take the next question, a gentle reminder to keep to only one question per media. Thank you. We'll take the next question from Michelle from Bloomberg, please.
Hi, good morning. Thanks for doing this. Minister Teo, I had a question for you. Given that you've been speaking with workers and especially small businesses about the effect of the stimulus so far, I'm wondering if you could comment on the status of some of these initiatives, including, I know in the early days, we talked a lot about rental relief and government efforts to kind of push that further and make sure it was getting to the right place. Can you talk about what businesses are saying about whether that is now seeing its effects and whether there are other concrete policies that have had some effect but might need some more time to take effect in full?
Michelle, maybe I'll invite Minister Chan to comment on that. Just to say that, of course, whether it is Ministry of Manpower or the Trade and Industry Ministry, we all have regular interactions with businesses. Just last week, for example, I met with the Singapore Chinese Chamber of Commerce and Industry, their young business group, and they expressed a very keen interest to transform their own business models. Quite a few of them are second-generation business owners. They know that the timeline for them to move towards digitalization, for example, has shortened a great deal. And they, however, do feel kind of constrained in terms of being able to assemble the right people to help them make these transformation journeys. So what we are doing is to support the Enterprise Singapore as an agency to reach out to these companies and to link them up with the centers of knowledge, as well as to help them to close these gaps in their knowledge and understanding so that they can make these transitions. But I think if you look at the level of commitment that these businesses are demonstrating, it is very, very encouraging. And in my interactions with them, I also hear them expressing a strong level of commitment to try and keep their Singaporean core, which are things that we want to strongly support them on. Chun Sing?
So as Joe mentioned, we have regular interactions with all our business chambers and companies in the respective industries. And I've mentioned, I think we can divide them broadly into three buckets. The first bucket are those companies that have actually done well, and they continue to be very optimistic about their future. Many of these companies are in the professional services side, ICT, biopharma. What are their concerns, even though they are doing well? Their number one concern is whether they can continue to access the global markets, particularly in the wake of a rising protectionism across the world. For many of them, they also see the tremendous opportunities in the digital market. So they are very supportive of our efforts to uphold the global trading system with like-minded countries and like-minded partners, including many of the MNCs. They are very supportive of the push for us to have more digital agreements with partner countries so that they can access more markets. So this is the first bucket of businesses who have done well and expect to continue to do well. Now then there's a second bucket of businesses. They are waiting for the resumption of demand. There are two parts of the market for this second group. There's the local demand and there's the external demand. For the local demand, they are encouraged by the progressive resumption of business activities. So this includes F&B, it includes retail. They are seeing customers returning. But what are they concerned about? Two things. Number one, they know that given the uncertainties of the job market, people are likely to spend less. Number two, they know the geopolitical issues beyond Singapore, which will add volatility to their demand. So we are working with these companies to see how we can support them to preserve their core capabilities and capacities. So some of the things that we have done include, for example, the tourism side, how we try to catalyze domestic spending for the tourism sector so that we can help them through this difficult period. Of course, we know and we understand that the domestic demand will never be able to fully replace the previous demand brought about by the foreign tourists. But the other set of concerns that they have has to do with the external market conditions. They are very cognizant of the challenges posed by the trade tensions amongst the major economies. So what they are doing and what we are working with them to do is to make sure that we continue to diversify our markets so that they are not overly dependent on any one particular market. So this has to do with the second group of companies. The third group of companies that we have encountered are those who are very realistic that in the next 6 to 12 months, their previous model of operations is unlikely to return back to normal. These include people in the social entertainment industries and the MICE industry. In the social entertainment industries, many of the players there are looking at new business models to see how they can perhaps pilot a new concept of operations that will not put the entire business at great risk. So some of them have done some of these things by combining the actual with the virtual to see whether there's a new business model that they can come up with. Likewise, for the MICE industry, STB has also piloted new programs whereby they combine the physical meeting in smaller groups with a larger virtual meeting. And these are new business models that the business owners are trying out, and the government and the trade associations will do what we can to support them. So I think the different industries have different challenges and different opportunities. But I think what cheered me most is that all of them realize that we can't wait for the crisis to blow over before we resume our activities. Instead, we have to actively look at new business models to see how we can seize the opportunities now rather than to wait for the opportunities to come by again after the crisis.
Thank you. We have time for 3 last questions. Can we have Charlotte from The Economist with her question, please?
Good morning, thank you. My question is for Minister Teo. How do you define attachment opportunities? In what way is that different from a traineeship? Thank you.
Charlotte, how do you decide?
How do you define attachment opportunity?
I see,
In what
okay.
way is that different from a traineeship?
Yeah, thank you very much, Charlotte. We look at it from the company standpoint that if they were to make a job offer, there is a understanding of commitment to the employee, both in the legal sense as well as in the ethical sense. When you offer a job, you do need to meet employment obligations such as paying for the Social Security. In our case, this is the Central Provident Fund. You need to ensure that all of the Employment Act obligations towards the employee is met. So that is the commitment in the legal sense. Then in the ethical sense is that most companies, when they take on board a employee, they will also endeavor to make available a career development path. This is, after all, what people look for, when they join an organization, to develop a relationship and also to provide a pathway for their own advancement in life. And attachment opportunity at the outset will not quite involve the same level of commitment on the part of the company. They are essentially hosting someone for the short term, giving this individual exposure to the company's range of businesses, ways of fulfilling customer needs, responses to customers' requirements if they are out of the ordinary, and also getting a sense of the company culture. So an attachment opportunity, if it is well curated, does enable the individual to get a good sense of what the company is about, what the product and services are about, and how they interact with their customers and their different markets as well as suppliers. And an attachment opportunity, if it is well curated, will also allow the host company to assess the individual and hopefully in time to come decide that if opportunities for employment do open up, that this individual may be a good fit. So that is how an attachment opportunity and employment differs. Now we call it an attachment opportunity as opposed to a traineeship opportunity for fresh graduates, because in the case of fresh graduates, there's a higher tendency that you can attach the person to a more senior member of the staff team in the company, and if you shadow this person, you are likely to also pick up very useful skills. In the case of mid-career, middle-aged individuals, quite likely they are able to operate independently on their own too. So we don't sort of consider this, and we don't call it a traineeship opportunity. We call it an attachment opportunity because there is a high degree of likelihood that the individual at the mid-career or middle-aged levels actually will bring something to the company. So it is less of a one-way, I'm giving you a traineeship opportunity. It's more two ways, that the company also gains from the experience and the skill sets that you bring. So that's just one way of thinking about it.
The next question will be from Zheng Yi from Channel 8 News.
Hi, this is Zheng Yi from Channel 8 News. I would like to request both Min Chan and Min Teo to say a few words in Mandarin on our areas of focus moving on and also on government efforts. Thank you.
Sorry, Chen, you wanted us to say a few words. You need a Mandarin soundbite, is it? Okay.
Yes.
Okay, why don't we do this? We take the rest of the question first, then we come back to the Mandarin soundbite, so that the rest of the other people can complete the thing first. Then will give you a rain check. I'll come back to this once we finish the other 2 questions.
Thank you, Ken.
Okay, we'll take a question from Gek Ling from Shin Min and then come back to Zheng Yi.
Hi, okay, I have a question for Min Jo, because you mentioned about this is the first time that we actually have this job situation report, and then it will be available on, I don't know what frequency, so maybe can Min Jo share with us what frequency would that be, and also what kind of details can we expect in the future job situation report? Thank you.
Thank you very much. We will try to make this job situation report available to you on a weekly basis. However, I should caveat that every week we will cover different aspects of the job situation, not necessarily the same things over and over again. For example, in terms of the opportunities that have been curated, as well as the placements, on a weekly basis, you will not see very much changes. But there are other aspects of the job situation that we can share with you. For example, updates on retrenchments, updates on cost-saving measures that companies are implementing. So I think over the course of the next few weeks, you will see a pattern emerge as to how we will try to assemble the job situation report as best as possible to provide members of the media and through you to members of the public a comprehensive look at what's happening in the labor market. So more to come. Thanks.
Thank you. We'll go back to Zheng Yi for her request on a Mandarin soundbite. That was the last question.
That's the last question, is it?
Oh, that was the last
question. Oh, okay. Joe, you understand?
I'll try first, huh? Yeah, okay. 谢谢大家。求职者的担忧还有焦虑，政府能够充分的理解。就此呢，政府已经推出一系列的计划，帮助他们尽快走出困境。我们当然也要恳请求职者在求职方面要保持开放的心态，考虑走入新的领域，或趁这个时候呢，提升自己的技能。政府推出的心心相连就业与技能配套，承诺将竭尽所能为求职者网络10万个就业或者是见习还有培训机会。如今呢，已经有24000名国人在心心相连的就业计划下找到了新的工作。那些无法立即找到一份全职职位的求职者，政府也帮助他们配对可以获取津贴的见习机会或者是培训课程。目的呢，是要帮助他们度过眼前的这个难关，把握时机学习技能，让他们能够在经济复苏的时候尽快找到更好的这个职位。人力部和劳动力发展局也正在努力将职业配对与咨询服务更广泛的提供给求职者。但是在上个月，也就是7月，劳动力发展局就加大了职业配对服务的力度，主办了59场线上还有线下的职业展和招聘会，方便求职者寻籍，还有他们可以更容易的去应征工作。接下来呢，我们也会把心心相连就业与技能中心带入全岛24个组屋区，让求职者能够更及时、更方便的获得就业方面的这个援助。那么我相信呢，只要大家能够保持一个灵活还有开放的心态呢，加上我们的雇主也愿意给我们的求职者，尤其是上了年级的或者是中途转换跑道的这些求职者一个机会呢，我们呢能够一起携手走出这个难关。谢谢大家。
谢谢黎明。那首先让我再简短的分享这3点。那第一，我们现今所面对的挑战是在我们国家历史里面前所未有的，而这接下来的几个月和1、2年的不确定因素还是非常的高，所以我们不能坐以待毙的说，希望再多几个星期或几个月，我们就能走出这阴霾。所以我们得现在就积极的开始 探讨我们在这个疫情的笼罩下，怎么样去重组我们的经济，抓紧所有的机遇，而不是继续的等着下去，或者以消极的态度等下去。反而我们要以积极的心态，做出我们应该也能做到的回应，把握这些机遇。那为什么我们说？那第二点就是为什么我们说在接下来有许多不确定的因素，有4大要点。第一，在国际的局势方面已经出现了很大的变化，在地缘政治方面，贸易保护主义的抬头，还有许多的大国关系和挑战方面，将会造成更多的不确定因素，影响整个经济的发展和复苏。那第二方面，通过了这次疫情的经验，有许多的跨国公司，也包括本地公司，已经开始重新的考虑他们在全球的部署，他们在全球不管是供应链或者是生产线的部署，这会带来许多的冲击，也会带来许多的机遇，所以我们得抓紧机会，在这些跨国公司和本地公司再考虑他们部署的当儿，把最优良的条件献给他们，把他们的投资吸引到新加坡，让我们有更多更好的就业机会。那第三个变数就是工作性质已经开始改变了。从疫情的经验，我们可以看到有许许多多的工作，包括许多白领工作，现在已经可以在线上做，所以这跟以前很不一样。所以这将会带给我们的白领工友更多的机遇，就是超越了我们国家的地理位置，超越了我们的土地的局限，来适应更大的世界市场。不过这也带来许许多多的挑战，因为这也意味着其他国家的白领工友也可以挑战我们的白领工作，就算他们不在新加坡，他们也可以是我们的竞争者，所以这一点我们得非常的谨慎处理。那第四，在经济成长放缓的时候，会带来有许多的社会挑战，贫富差距，本地人与外国人的区分，或者就算是新加坡公民与永久居民的区分，所以这对我们的社会凝聚力将造成一个非常大的一个影响，所以我们也得谨慎的处理。那这4大因素给我们的提示是，我们不能坐以待毙，等着说恢复到以前的日子，我们得积极的面对现实，做出调整来应付眼前所带来的挑战和机遇。那在这方面，政府将加大我们的力度，帮助我们的企业保住员工的饭碗。企业有不同的需要，我们得对症下药的去帮助他们。有一些企业，他们其实通过疫情的洗礼，他们了解到他们的市场会更大，他们的前景还是非常的明亮。比如在生物医药那方面，在数码科技那方面，精密工程那方面，这还是有许许多多的机遇。政府将会和他们携手的扩大他们的市场，帮助他们提升他们的业务，让他们造就更多的就业机会给新加坡的员工。那第二方面，有一些本地的公司，他们知道他们的市场在过几个月或1、2年会恢复到以前的一个需求，他们最紧迫的挑战就是怎么样度过眼前的难关。所以在这方面，政府会通过不同的措施帮助他们度过眼前的难关，保住他们的产能和产量，加以时日，在经济恢复的时候，他们 能继续的扩大他们的业务。那不过最有挑战性的是第三方面的一些公司，他们已经意识到以前的营运模式已经不再能使用，这包括一些餐饮业，也包括一些娱乐消闲的活动。他们现在正积极的探讨怎么样做出改变，来有一个新的营运模式，让他们继续的生存下去。在这方面，政府将和商会、工会携手的探讨，怎么样帮这些企业做出他们所需要的改变，而发展他们的新的营运模式。如果我们在这三样不同的企业，这3组不同的企业方面能对症下药的话，我们有信心，我们的企业还是在这不确定因素的当儿能分得一杯羹。那最重要的一点，我们知道，这是我们在我们国家55年独立历史最大的挑战。我们的对新加坡人的承诺是这样：不管挑战是多么的难，我们会一起并肩作战，一起走下去。我们有信心，我们有条件，会克服这一切的挑战。和建国一代和立国一代比起来，我们可以说我们的条件比他们来得好。我们也应该以这个基础做出更大的努力，让我们的下一代有一个更好、更光明的前途。我们有信心，我们和世界所建立的网络、我们的技术、我们的劳资争关系、我们的长远政策，都能为我们的下一代制造更好的就业机会，吸引更多更好的投资。所以让我们大家一起携手的走过这难关，为我们的下一代再创辉煌。谢谢。